Good morning. Okay, so the salvation as theosis. This is what we're talking about this winter and spring. These Sunday morning classes be an extension of our catechism on Saturday mornings. Salvation as theosis, real quick, is thoroughly biblical, but curiously enough, significantly enough, the Orthodox Church is the only church that teaches salvation as theosis. The Roman Church would have, maybe in the first 700-800 years or so, but then Augustine comes on the scene, and I think under the influence of Augustine, the West strayed from the biblical teachings. And so all those traditions, both Roman and Protestant, that are in any way under the influence of Augustine, which would mean Augustine, Anselm, Aquinas, they will not teach salvation as theosis. Because they uphold a philosophy, an ontology, an understanding of how reality is structured that simply will not allow them. They couldn't teach theosis if they wanted to, because they adhere to, let's say, a vision of how reality is structured and how reality moves that is drawn more from the pagan philosophers than it is from the Bible. That's my assertion, and I dare say it's a studied assertion. I dare say I know what I'm talking about. But you don't have to accept that. You can argue with it if you want to, but don't argue with me. This morning, what I want to do is go into the, to continue what we've been doing the last couple Sundays, and that is we're going to go deep. We're going to go deep today. Well, we've been going deep. We're going to go deeper into the roots of reality, and specifically the root, how we exist. What is human nature and destiny? What is our nature? What is our destiny? And that will be given to us. We'll be finding that if we can find our beginning. Where did we begin? That, by the way, will also tell us where we end. So we're going to go to the very beginning of our being. And we're not going to go to the philosophers. We're going to go to the Bible. We're going to see that the doctrine of theosis is the theme of theosis is sounded as early as the first chapter of Genesis. Theosis, by the way, for those of you who have not been here before, the classical formulation of it is God became man that man might become God. That's from John chapter 1, verses 12 through 14. And the classical formulation, as I just gave it, was first formulated by St Irenaeus of Lyon in the second century, last quarter of the second century, and then it was picked up by St Athanasius in the 4th century. But honestly, that's the formulation of it. It's simply a summation or an abbreviated, an abridgment, let's say, of John chapter 1, verses 12 through 14. As many as received him, to them he gave the ability to become children of God. There is man becoming God. And then it goes on. The Logos became flesh and dwelt among us. There's God became man. So that is the classical locus, the locus classicus, whatever you want to call it, that you can go to show that theosis, the doctrine of God becoming man, that man might become God, is biblical. The difference between the biblical doctrine of theosis and, let's say, philosophy's notion that we are all particles of God and destined to dissolve back into God is precisely that. In biblical theology, as we're going to see this morning, to become one with God is not to dissolve into God. It's to become a communicant of God. And that's based on the fact that God is Holy Trinity. He's a communion of persons. The Son and the Holy Spirit do not dissolve into the Father. They don't dissolve into one another. They are from eternity, and yet they are one. 3 in 1, 1 in 3. So that So let's go to these are the texts that I want that I'm building our lessons off of. 126 to 27. That's where it says God said, "Let us make man according to our icon." And what's the Hebrew there? Is that demut? No. What's the word?
It would be selen.
Selen.
Demut is the other one.
Yeah, and according to our demut, right? Demut.
Yeah.
And let them So that's Genesis chapter 126. So God made man according to his icon. He made them male and female, and he blessed them, saying, "Increase and multiply." The other passage is Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, where it says, and God fashioned. He fashioned. The word is eplazo, which is the word from we get plastics. So it's like he's like that's where the imagery of God as a potter, and man is the clay that God fashioned with his hands comes from. And God fashioned man. He shaped man from the earth, from the dust of the earth, or from the khun of the earth, which in the Septuagint, that word khun is where did I see it? It's also used. It's a word that's used for the stuff they put in the walls of the temple. So it just makes you wonder. It also might mean a mound. And in antiquity and in the religious thought of the world, a mound is like a sacred plot of ground. So it just makes you wonder. He made him, and remember the earth that he's making man from is good earth. It's blessed. Well, looks at everything, says it's good. It's very good. It's kalos. It's beautiful. It's vigorous. It's vital. It's healthy. So he's fashioning man from good earth, good, rich, fertile earth. Yes, Matthew.
Perhaps relevant to the construction of Orthodox churches, khun is also used in Leviticus as plaster.
That's the word yes, that's the passage I'm thinking of. Yes, I couldn't remember where I was getting that, but yes. And then it says, and he breathed into his face the breath of life, which would be the uncreated energy of life. God's uncreated energy. And man became a living psyche, soul in the Greek, but in the Hebrew, nephesh. He becomes a living nephesh. And in the Hebrew, not even the lexicons will tell you this, because the lexicons are just telling you how it's being translated. But the etymology of nephesh is that the nephesh is the throat. And so it encompasses this whole area. So when it says so it says God breathed into Adam's nostrils, his face, nose, mouth, and he became a living throat. What does that tell you? Man lives by what he eats and breathes. So man is created by God, and he doesn't come alive. He doesn't become a living soul. That doesn't mean that he wasn't alive before, because all the other creatures were living. It means that he wasn't living as man, you could say. He wasn't living as man, because all of the other creatures were created, each one according to its own kind. But when he sets out to create man in Genesis 1:26, he creates man according to his own image. So man is not yet he's not yet alive as a man, as man. But when God breathes into him, now he's living as a man, because if God is breathing into him, well, tell me that that's not theosis. Tell me that that's not God entering man and dwelling in man, dwelling in and abiding in him. Doesn't that take you to the words of Jesus in St. John's Gospel? His desire is to abide in us, and we in him. That's what he wants for us. Well, Jesus is simply going back to Genesis. This is what it is to be man. for God to abide in us as his house, his temple, and us to abide in God as our house, our temple. So that's so then now it makes sense, why God says, he gives man things to eat, right? And the food that he wants to give him to eat is the tree of life. Well, what's the tree of life? We know. Come on, it's Christ. So that man is created from the very beginning to ascend to the top of the mountain where the tree of life is, in order to partake of the fruit of the tree of life. That's the fruit of Christ. That's Holy Eucharist. That's what we're doing in the church, in the divine midst. So anyway, that's the second passage. And the next passage that I want us to go to is Genesis 22, 21, 23. This is where God, in Genesis chapter 2, is building woman. He's building her. That's the word. And God, let's see, it says, starting with verse 21, and God brought, well, this is chock full of theology. All of this is Paschal, Easter. It's all Paschal. I'll show you why here. And God, it's like he threw Adam into an ecstasis. Ecstasis, okay? That's a Greek word. That means away from, outside of. Stasis means standing, to stand. So he threw upon him, the word is epipalo, he threw upon him, he made to rest upon him an ecstasis. In other words, he took man and drew him, put him in his place where he was outside of himself. If you can, he was in ecstasy, he was in ecstasis. When the myrrh bearers come to the tomb, on the third day, it says that when they see the angel and they hear the report, it says that they're thrown into an ecstasis. And this word ecstasis actually occurs several times, many times throughout the Old Testament, in many significant places. For example, it occurs when Abram is making his sacrifice to God in response to the covenant that God has formed with him. It says that God throws Abram into an ecstasis. So this word ecstasis is a significant word of theology. And I think it's also significant for the theology of the church, the biblical theology of the church, that it paints a picture of Adam being, how would you say? Well, standing outside of himself. Standing outside of himself. He's not just enclosed in himself, he's outside of himself. Because this being outside of yourself, if you will, this is the mystery of communion, being in communion with another. You come outside of yourself. That's the movement of eros, which has been perverted, of course, by our society, not surprisingly. But eros in its purity means this movement of the self, the heart, and movement of the self coming out of yourself in ecstasis, looking for someone to belong to. And this eros, this erotic desire that agitates us and troubles us, was implanted in us by God. This is the root of our being. And it's through this eros that we are impelled. And you can't stop the eros. You're going to come out of yourself in one way or another. And you're either going to give yourself to this God or to that God, to this husband or to that husband. So of course, you want to give, God planted in us because God himself is moved by eros. St. Maximus the Confessor, God is impelled. God subjects himself to his own erotic longing in which he comes out of himself and creates the world. And he puts that same erotic desire, the same blessed force, as St. Maximus calls it, he implants it in us through which we come out of ourselves. And in that space outside of ourselves, in this place of ecstasis, here's where we unite with one another and come into communion. Matthew?
So there's actually, just to build on your point, and it's a good point.
Yeah.
So the Hebrew term is targama.
For what? The term for what? Ecstasis?
Ecstasis.
What is it again?
It's targama from radam.
Okay.
Stun somebody.
Stun? Okay.
It can be either positive or negative. So apart from Genesis 2, you also see it used in Genesis 15 to refer to Abram when the Lord brings a deep sleep upon him.
That's the word that it's translated ecstasis there.
And it's a positive thing because that's when God makes him the promise to make of him a great nation after he has come out.
Interesting. Out of his a very concrete image.
Yeah.
Out of his home.
Yeah.
Which has a mystical significance, does it not?
Yes.
He comes out of himself.
And where tardema is used in a negative way.
Yeah.
So when Saul is plotting to kill David, God allows David to escape by bringing tardema upon Saul in this force.
So they go to sleep.
Yes. But the eros of Saul in that case is for his own authority, his own power, his own lineage.
Say that again. If it's for his own power.
Well, his eros is wrongly directed.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Oh,
It's
I
not
see.
directed towards God.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Well, then it becomes an image of death.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So if we give our eros, this erotic desire, that we're giving ourself. If we do not give it to God, according to his commandment, we're giving it to something else that is not God. And if we give it to something else that is not God, where are we going?
Orion.
Back to the dust. What?
I said Orion.
Exactly. That's what sin is.
Yeah.
Missing the mark. So we're going right back to the dust that we came from. So here's Adam and Eve. We're already going to be ahead of ourselves. The point we want to make this morning. But they give their erotic desire to the tree of learning good and evil, which is a dominant symbol in the mystery religions of antiquity. All of the things that you see in the garden are symbols of the mystery religions of antiquity, what the scholars now call the sacred marriage, where the god unites with the goddess. Imaged in the priest and the priestess. So it's through sexuality that is considered to be the kind of the main, the primary embodiment, if you will, of eros. And so through this, and it draws, and the image for this is the Ouroboros, the serpent swallowing his tail. That's how life sustains itself, by eating itself. And so you have the serpent, the Ouroboros, hanging from the tree of learning good and evil. So you could say that when Adam and Eve partake of that tree, when they choose to breathe and to eat, to breathe the air of lust, eros, first perverted now into lust, and when they choose to eat sexuality. As not as the God-given blessing that it is to create children, but just as carnal pleasure, as lust. Well, they have given their eros, if you will, to the serpent, and they're going to suffer the same fate. Now the serpent is eating them as they eat the serpent. That also is a theme of the Far East. We're the food for the gods. The gods are the food for us. It's like eating in the Far East is it's a main symbol, main theme. But anyway, the point is that when our eros is directed, when it's directed, when it goes awry, then whatever we're giving it to, that becomes our God. And we give to it, we project onto it all the desires that are latent in that eros. All the desires. And we project it onto that thing, and it becomes our God, and we are attached to it. We're imprisoned by it. And now it becomes our God, it becomes our fate, it becomes our beginning. So there's Adam and Eve going back to the dust of the ground. So, okay, all of that. So I want you to see those. So chapter 2, verse 23, where God builds the woman, and note that he builds, that when Adam sees her, he says, he shall be called woman, which is not so clear in the Greek. It's more clear in the Hebrew, where Adam is Adam, and the woman is Adama. It's like, this is very significant. He says, this now is bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken from her man, her husband. That's that's chock full of theology. And then finally, we're going to hope to get to, we won't get to it this morning, I can see it already. But we have touched on it on 3 Sundays ago. It says in Genesis 3:23, this is after Adam and Eve have chosen to fill their nephesh with the fruit of the tree of learning good and evil instead of the fruit of the tree of life. So as a result, they never get to the tree of life. They're stopped at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And instead of going farther up the mountain to the tree of life, they go back down the mountain. Now they're still in the garden though. And here we come to the climax of this first episode in Genesis. And God says, he says, behold, Adam has become as one of us. Or let's say, he has become as though he was one of us, knowing good and evil. And now, lest he stretch forth his hand and take from the tree of life and eat it. Let's get him out of here. Because his soul is already corrupted. It's already corrupted. And the Lord isn't going to allow his spirit, to mingle with this corruption of Adam. So, and also, St. Gregory of Nyssa would say, as it says here in Genesis, it says, and lest he live forever. That would be hell. Because he's living forever in this state in which he is outside of God. He's God's rival. He hasn't become God, in communion with God. He has become God on his own, as his own God. And this is the beginning of world history. And it comes to its climax early on in the building of the Tower of Babel. And you could say that the Tower of Babel, the building of the Tower of Babel, is the template for the whole of human history. Most certainly, it is the template for junior high, is it not? When all of us are parading around as though we are gods. Look at me, I'm a god. Fall in love with me, worship me, I'm a god. So these are the pillars that I want to build our lesson on. Matthew, did you have something?
A couple of things here. So the breath of man is the nephesh, the throat of man.
Yes. That receives the breath. Ruach is the breath.
Does that
Well, it's interesting.
I'm sorry.
Am I?
Does that also happen with Eve?
What?
Does she get breathed into?
No.
So we directly come from his nephesh, Adam?
Well, it says you come from his body.
The woman is built like a temple.
Yeah.
Right. So banah, that's the Hebrew word that's used. It's used for the temple. So the woman in a certain sense has a higher status than the man because she is built up by God.
In this climate of feminism, we'll need to address this point before we leave in the next 10 minutes, so that you don't leave angry.
Oh no, I just wondered.
Go ahead, Matthew.
But it becomes, well, it's interesting. God builds a temple of flesh, which is the image of the Virgin, right? Man, when he starts to build banah, when this verb is used, he builds walled cities of stone and names them after his sons.
Interesting. Excellent point. Excellent. Did you catch that? When God builds, he builds a person, flesh and blood. When man builds, in other words, he builds something that's alive. When man builds, he builds something that's dead. Stone, wall, and enclosed. When God builds, he builds a creature. He builds a person of flesh and blood, who by nature, as I hope to show in a couple minutes, is by nature comes out of himself. Whereas man builds a walled city in which man is enclosed within himself. That's a beautiful point. I had not thought of that. Anything else? Is that it?
Well, it's interesting that they use two different words for breath in that passage.
Okay, the one would be ruach. What's the other one?
Neshama.
Neshama. Okay.
It's the breath, because God doesn't have a throat. God's not physical.
Yes, sir. Right?
So the neshama is the breath that he blows into the nephesh.
Do you know what it is in the Greek? It's pneuma in Genesis 2.
Let me take a look. The definition on.
No, he breathed into him. No, it just says, pnaim. Pnaim is a derivative of pneuma. So anyway, while you're looking that up, so let's go here to what the picture that is being drawn of our beginning, of our root, and let's see what theology comes out of that. This will be very helpful because when we finally turn to talk about the way of prayer, unceasing prayer in the way of the church, by which we fulfill our baptismal oath to unite ourselves to Christ. This is giving the map that shows how that prayer proceeds. We note in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, that man comes into being from out of nothing, but he comes into being from inside, or according to, aligned with the image of God. So the image of God is the Father. Now, of course, we're importing here into here some revelation from the New Testament, the revelation from the River Jordan, where we see that God is the Holy Trinity. We're also drawing now from the Holy Fathers, the theology of the Holy Fathers, that God is Father, and He's the cause. He's the source of the Trinity, of the Godhead, not a divine essence. The Father Himself is the source, the cause. And so He begets the Son, and from Him proceeds His Holy Spirit, who rests in the Son. The Holy Spirit rests in the Son. But the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father. The Son is begotten of the Father. So we see in that the Father is the source. He's the cause of the Godhead. And that will become very significant in a couple minutes, maybe. So then we read the story of man's creation as male and female. And we notice, let's jump to Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. We notice that God fashions man from the dust of the ground. He makes Adam, from the dust of the ground. St. Irenaeus of Lyon in the 2nd century identifies the Son and the Holy Spirit as the hands of God, the Father, by which He fashions man from the dust, from the good earth of the ground. It's a beautiful image, God taking very special care when He creates man. The creatures, He loves the creatures like you love your pets, but He does not create His creatures, the animals and so forth and so on. He does not create them according to His own image. He creates them according to their own kind. But when He creates man, let us make man after our image, after our icon. And so He creates man in His own image and likeness. And just as God is a communion of persons, so also He makes man as a communion of persons, male and female, who can come together, and in their own way, they can become images of God in their capacity to create life. So I take it as significant that when in Genesis 1:26, it says, immediately after God has created man as male and female in His own image, what does it proceed to say? God blessed them, and He says, increase and multiply and fill the earth and rule the earth. Again, remember what we said last Sunday, that depending on what you understand the image to be, that's how you will understand the construction of man, how man is structured. And it's also how you will understand what it means for man to dominate the earth, to subdue the earth. So tell me, if the image of God, which it is Christ. Colossians 1:15 is the one that I always remember. There are other passages where Christ is identified as the icon of the Father, but this is the one I always remember. So in the church, we take the New Testament revelation of Christ as the Son of God, the icon of the Father, who, by the way, is also, therefore, wisdom. because in Wisdom of Solomon 7:27 or so through 28, is identified as the icon of God's eternal glory, or of the eternal Father. So if the icon is the Son of God, if it's the wisdom of God, let's go real quick to wisdom, because I want to make sure I get this all right. I got to go to this Bible because the pages are missing in his other Bible. It says that wisdom is the read real quick here. Wisdom, let's see, wisdom is more moving than an emotion. She passes and goes through all things by reason of her purity. She is the breath, atmos in the Greek. She is the breath of the power of God and a pure influence, aporia. In other words, a pure going out, always going out, flowing from the glory of the Almighty. So she's this cascading stream of light, uncreated light coming directly from the Father. Therefore, no defiled thing fall into her. She's the brightness of the everlasting light. She's the unspotted mirror of the power of God and the icon of his goodness. So if the icon in which man is made as male and female is wisdom, what is man going to do when he fills the earth and subdues it according to the image of God in which he's made? What's going to happen to the earth, right? He's going to fill it with the light of God. He's going to subdue it. He's going to tame it with the love of God. That's what it means. This is not a gospel. It's not a gospel of power. It's a gospel of love. But love is all powerful. Because power in and of itself can only destroy. But love has the power to create life and to heal and to tame and to give joy. So this is the power of God. And this is what man is created to fill the earth with. So I want you to notice from here, going to Genesis 2:7, where he makes man, Adam, from the dust of the ground. And then we go to Genesis 2:23, where he makes woman. I want you to notice, I need to back up and make a couple points here real quick. God is the source of the Holy Trinity, not the essence. The essence exists within the persons of the Holy Trinity. So what does it tell us about the character of God? Is he an abstract essence primarily and then personal, or is he primarily personal? He's primarily personal because the source of the Godhead is the person of the Father. The Son proceeds from the Father, and therefore he shares co-eternally with the Father his essence. But he does not proceed from the essence of the Father. I think when the fathers were constructing the Nicene Creed, initially I think they had that he proceeds from the essence of the Father. But then when they corrected when they went back and revised it at the Second Ecumenical Council in 381, and gave us the creed that we now have, they changed it from he proceeds from the essence of the Father to simply he proceeds from, or he is begotten of the Father. And the same with the Holy Spirit. He does not proceed from the essence of the Father. He proceeds from the Father. And therefore they share their essence is the Father's because they receive their essence from the Father. Not in time, but not chronologically, but ontologically, if you can understand that. In other words, their being is from the Father. So that the source of the Holy Trinity is a person. So that the source of all reality, even uncreated reality, is the person of the Father. So that I want you to notice that when he creates Adam, the man, he creates a particular person. He doesn't create a human essence, materia, and then stamp on it his idea of man, some kind of Platonic idea of man. He does not stamp it onto the matter, the material. He forms the material so that going back to 126, which back into the Hebrew, which is very concrete. he fashions man basically as a statue that looks just like God. So that which is a Hebrew way of saying that man is created in the image and likeness of God, not just in his spirit, but even in his body, even outward. And St. Gregory of Nyssa, even though he's schooled by Greek philosophy, he's a student of the Bible, and he will bring this out. And even though he's saturated with Greek philosophical ideas, he still will say that even in his body, man is created in the image of God. He's created in such a way that the head is at the top, and the eyes are here so that man can look up. What he uses as an example to show that man, even in his body, is created in the image of God. But I want you to notice here, to get to our point, we have -2 minutes. He creates man as a person, Adam. And then when he goes to create woman, where does he go to get his material for the woman? Right? Well, Adam. So that woman's origin is personal. She comes into being, just like Adam comes into being, in the womb of Christ, if you will. Well, God makes man as male and female, so that both man as male and female comes into being in the womb, in the bosom of God, of the Son, who himself is the only begotten God, who is in the bosom of the Father. And then you see that woman comes into being also in this mystery of personal communion. She never comes into being outside of man. She comes into being inside of man as a person. So that man is created, male and female, as a mystery of personal communion, and now man is complete because now he's in the image of God, the Holy Trinity. This will become. We have to draw this point to a close. To add to Matthew, that what he was alluding to, if we see that the creation story is unfolding, from one major event to the next major event, well, we see that creation is not finished in Genesis until Eve, until the woman is made. Why is it then? Why is it that woman is the one who finishes the creation for now? For now, because the creation is not finished.
To be in his image, Adam has to create?
Nope. You need to look farther down the road. Remember that the Bible is all about Christ becoming flesh. How does Christ become flesh? How does God become flesh? So that the destiny of man can be realized, to become one with God. How does that happen? Through the woman. She's the one who receives God, the Son, and makes him so that he becomes man through her. Therefore, through her, we can become God. Now, when God the Son, in his obedience, as man, is obedient to the Father, unlike the old Adam, all the way even to death. Now the creation is finished, because now man has realized through Christ, who was able to do this through the woman. Man is able now to become God through Christ, because Christ has cleansed human nature of death. He has rolled away the wall of enmity. He has rolled the stone away, so that anybody who wants to now can come inside the tomb and into the mystery of Christ's resurrection. All of this because of the new Adam, who was born of the new Eve. And the mystery of this salvation, as theosis, is incarnate, it's embodied here in the church, in the divine liturgy, where we are going to go upstairs now, and we're going to go through some hymns and some prayers to prepare our minds and our hearts to receive the body and blood of Christ, and to become God as God has become one with us. So let's do that. Let's stop talking and let's go upstairs and do it.